If you remember, we were talking about what Jesus said when he said, I'll build my church on a rock. And so, Peter is probably that rock, but also there's a question in my mind, and there are passages in the Bible I'm not sure yet about until Jesus shows me. You keep seeking. And that is, the rock could have been, but I don't think so, but it could have been the confession that Peter said, that he'll build the church, his people, on what they believe. And that's true too, by the way. And what was the confession? You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Those are two vital, very important things to be able to get saved on, to realize who he is and to give your life to him. And so there's a rock. And then there's another metaphor. There's another picture that's coming up, and it's about keys. We'll get to that in a little bit. But there's something about keys that Jesus said he gives to Peter, and I believe it's also the apostles. And then later, a couple chapters later, he really is going to give it to the whole church. And that's another really questionable thing, exactly what he's saying, so it's kind of cool. But if you remember in the last story that we did, well, first, here it is. Here's these guys. Jesus is speaking to the apostles here, his disciples, and he's particularly talking to Peter, so I'll pull him out a little bit if you can see this. He's talking to him, and they're all listening, and, but it's not just to Peter, but he's kind of becomes the leader, and it's also to all of them. And of course, it's very important for us, too, with the things that Jesus said. So this is really cool stuff. And what he said, if you remember in the last one, just as a quick review, is so important. We could talk about this a number of times. Jesus said, I will build my church. By the way, that's very cool. That's powerful. If he's going to build it, he's going to do it right. He promised it. This is one of those hundreds and hundreds of promises that Jesus and the Bible teaches. Jesus said, I will build. Whose church is it? His church. It's not my church. I'm a pastor, and pastor at heart and all. And there's lots of leaders in the church, not our church. I'm part of that church. He said he'll build me, and he'll build his church, kind of like building a building or something. And he said the gates of hell, he said down here, the gates of hell, these are supposed to be gates, here going in, will not overcome it. The gates of hell will not destroy the church. Why? Because he'll build it. And basically he's saying it's going to be there forever. I mean, the church is going to go on and on until, Jesus Christ comes back and all. And so, by the way, the word Hades is the Greek word. There's 3 Greek words. See, the Bible was written in what's called Koine Greek. It's a particular Greek. And so it wasn't written in English or Spanish or Russian or German or all the other languages. But it was written in Greek. And then when they translated, they changed it into our language or your language, if you're listening to this. And that's how we get our English version or Portuguese version or whatever. And so the word Hades is one of the words for hell. The word hell, one of them is Hades. And it really originally means the grave, or like death, okay? And also, it's a place of punishment, which we'll find out in Luke, especially Luke 16. It really brings it out, what the Hades is. And so, it's a grave. So, like when you say, in the Old Testament, when they died and they went to what the Old Testament word is Sheol, and so then they would die and go into the grave. And also, it represents death here. And then later, it developed into a place of punishment, which Jesus really brings out. By the way, while I'm at it, I would like to just write those 3 words in Greek. There's 3 of them used in the New Testament. And we'll start with Hades. Okay, Hades. And then we also have another one is Gehenna, which we'll talk about a lot more later. I've already kind of mentioned this, by the way. Gehenna is the lake of fire. My personal opinion is that's not happening yet. People who go into Hades, the first portion, is there now. And then later, Hades, the Bible says, is going to be put into Gehenna. Okay, so that's later. And there's only one time, there's a Greek word that's Tartarus. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Tartarus, right there. And that's only used in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4. And fallen angels are put there. So that's an interesting thing. It could be like a lower range, a lower, what do you call it? A lower region is what I was trying to think. I knew the word. So that could be that. But anyway, that's that. That's a kind of review. And now, right after Jesus said, I'll build my church, then he says, He's talking to Peter again. He says, I give unto you, and then he says, I give unto you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. He said, whatever you bind on earth, listen to the words, whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loose in heaven. Now, this is a pretty interesting thing, and I could talk for a long time. No, you probably say, no, don't talk too long. All right, but bind, whoops, that's a crazy B. Let me do that again. Okay, here's bind, whatever you bind on earth. That word means to, I'm trying to make it easy, prohibit. That's a big word. You don't allow. You do not permit it. So let's see, what's a good word for it? You don't give a permission, no permission. Basically, nope, I don't allow you to do it. How about that? Bind means no. And then loose, the word is loose. That means permit, allow, I'll say. And we'll that word, what we could do is to make it simple, permit, allow, or yep, you could do it, okay? So Jesus said, I give unto you, he's talking to Peter, and I don't think he's just talking to Peter, because a couple chapters later, he mentions it for the whole church. He says, whatever you bind on earth, and he's talking to the whole church there. But whatever you, what he's saying here is that, Peter, whatever you and the apostles and us, whatever you, well, first he says, I give unto you the keys. Personally, it was first to Peter. He's the first one, because he was the first one that really grasped this. He got it, and he confessed Jesus as Christ and Son of the living God. And then basically Peter took the keys of the kingdom of heaven. That's pretty powerful, by the way. You know, if someone gives you keys, it gives you authority and kind of gives you power to do something. Like if I take my keys and I gave it to someone to drive my car, they now have authority to get in my car, open it up, drive it. If I gave it to come into my home right here, you know, then they can walk into my home. They have the authority to come in it. These are my keys. Jesus says, I give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Wow. And I think what he's really saying here is you guys are the ones that are going to allow or help people to get to heaven. I give you authority to share the gospel, the good news of the kingdom, and that you have the authority to convert people, to bring them to Christ. That's cool stuff. In other words, you want to go to heaven, you want to go into the kingdom of heaven, I give you the keys. So now go on and start opening the door, you know, for everybody that you share with. Or there's others who know, you know, they're not going to follow the gospel. The people aren't repenting. They're not changing. They're not believing. Then he says, you have the power to bind them, you know, to say, no, you know, you're not entering. Now, obviously, it's really God that saves people. It's really God. It's Jesus and the Father. It's them that really, you know, save people. And he's got the authority. Like, these are my keys to my house and my car and other things. And so, you know, they're ultimately me. But he says here, I'm going to give them to you to use. And so they are the ones that preach. By the way, it's interesting. It was him first in Acts chapter 2. It was Peter that preached the gospel after they got filled with the Spirit of God. Bam. Then he preached the gospel, and guess what? 3,000 people were saved. He used the keys and he preached it and they got saved. He gives them power. He gives them the keys to the kingdom of heaven. And then he led 3,000 people to save. And guess what? That's in chapter 2. What happened in Acts 10? That in chapter 2 was the Jewish people, the Jews from all over the world. Then in Acts 10, God led him to Cornelius' house. We'll get into that cool story. It's very important, very, very important in the world. And to Gentiles. He preached to the Gentiles, the Greek people, the people non-Jews, you know, didn't come in the family of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the people in the Bible. And guess what happened? They got saved. So he gave them keys to both peoples of the world. One is Jewish people. Second is the Gentiles. Peter had that. He says, I give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. And then he said, whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Now, by the way, when it says shall be bound in heaven, it's really tricky in the Greek there. It's really interesting. I did some studies on this. Of course, I'd known this for a long time, but even more now. And what it's really seeming to say pretty strongly is that it's not like God looks up in heaven and says, okay, whatever you bind, I'm going to do it. Whatever you do, whatever you do. No, it's already done up in heaven. Like he's already instituted, he's kind of made told what he wants and what he doesn't in the gospel. And then we just go ahead and do according to his authority and by his Spirit. Remember I just said that the Spirit of God came in Peter and all that, and then he preached, and the Spirit of God filled him in the Gentile house. So it was the Spirit of God. So, but it comes through you, and that you can bind and loose. That's pretty powerful. You permit or don't permit. You permit or prohibit. You forbid someone to enter the kingdom of heaven or something, because you're not right with God and all. And so, you got to do it. Peter would say, and I would say, no, you got to do it God's way. And you're the one with the authority and the power to help somebody open the door for them to get saved. And you can say, no, you're not saved because you're not really repentant and all. He said that in Acts 8, by the way. Another thing real quick, I just want to mention, we'll find that out in John chapter 20. There's a passage right there. I think it's in 22 and 23, the verses or something. He kind of said, after he gave them the Spirit, the Holy Spirit was breathed on them, kind of a start of the Holy Spirit. Of course, the Holy Spirit came later, at the day of Pentecost in a more powerful way and filling them. But they had the Spirit. I believe they were born again at that point. And he said, whatever sins you forgive, it shall be forgiven. Whatever you don't forgive, shall not be forgiven. Well, only God is the one who could do, sins and all. But he gave them the authority, the keys to say, I pronounce you forgiven. If the guy's really doing it right, you're allowing them to hear the message and the truth about forgiveness. And then that person, because of the Spirit of God in Peter or apostles or me and you, if you're sharing with Jesus, you can really lead people to Christ. So it's not just Peter. Otherwise, if he died with the keys, how are people getting into heaven? We have the keys as well now. It's been passed down onto us. All right, I hope that got it. I hope it is understood. I hope I did a good job on explaining that. And I just do want to say that I'm not sure about all of it. Most of the Bible I'm sure about is very plain, but there's some like a little deeper and I'm not sure. And so, but at least we're learning and we're students of the Bible and we're going to get more and more knowledge from him and understanding. God bless you. Bye.